Are you sure that your experiment will be successful, Doctor? Well, I'm as sure as I can be, given our limited understanding of these ancient machines. Try not to worry so much, Commander. I'm sure he'll be fine. Ha! I care not for Hawthorne's health, Doctor. This experiment could change the world. The regime could rule this planet with an iron grip if we could implement this onto all of our soldiers. Well, we still have a lot of testing to do before that point, Commander. Come with me to my office and I'll show you our files. Welcome back, one and all, to our RimWorld Farming Empire, Episode 3. We begin today's episode by harvesting many a eggplant for our own consumption, but also for the consumption of the starving Thromboians. It was during this time of the harvest, though, that we had some massive news. Hack decided that he would propose to Sherd, and she accepted. So it would seem that we could expect some wedding bells for the two of them in the very near future. The two of them decided to have a nice, intimate dinner together in the dining room to celebrate the occasion, just before going to lie down in their home. After entering their quaint and cozy little cabin, Hack explained that he wished to have a serious conversation with her. Hack wished to raise his concerns about blindly following this ancient Thromboian that claims to be a goddess. Sherd explains that she's not simply blindly following this ancient. She stated that this ancient had some type of knowledge of Thromboians well before humans and the other races came to the planet of Degum, and there was no possible way for her to know that unless she truly was some type of ancient deity. Hack simply explained that he doesn't want to be going to war with the Marshals, and he doesn't trust this ancient Thromboian to keep peace among them. He says that he's a changed man and he doesn't want violence anymore. He simply wants to farm and take care of people. The conversation ended abruptly when Sherd explained that she's just extremely tired and no longer wishes to have this conversation, so the two of them went to lie in bed. As Hack lay there in the bed, he wondered if his wife-to-be and their chieftain would truly make the correct decisions when the time would come, or would she simply be the lapdog of some ancient being? Regardless though, the next day it was time for us to continue expanding our empire. We began some work on some more shelves in our warehouse so we could further our storage. Just as well, we decided that the old logging warehouse would be perfect to become a greenhouse so that we could grow more and more crops. It of course would need a little bit of patchwork with the walls, and just as well we would need to install some very pretty skylights so that the sunshine can come in, but obviously it was nothing that we hadn't done before, and once we had that completed, we began planting plenty of rice within. Then after some time had passed, it was finally time for us to reap our massive harvest of pumpkin plants from our other greenhouse. Now obviously we are going to be giving out these pumpkin crops to many other tribes. One such tribe actually does not have any animals available for a caravan, so we're actually going to try to drop these off to that tribe as soon as possible. They were known as the tribe of Ur, and we figured that Fifth and Lurkat would be perfect to drop the crops off to this very small Thromboian tribe. It would be a very good learning experience for both of them, as they're both new to our tribe, but Lurkat is also somewhat new to Thromboian ancestral culture. So the two of them loaded up the crops onto their horses and headed out. Lurkat and Fifth had been traveling for hours, with the two of them telling each other stories of their childhood. And then it was around about that time when the two of them saw a clearing in the forest and thought that it may be the perfect place to camp for the night. The two of them tied up their horses so that they wouldn't run away and began to lay out their sleeping bags. Hours later, after the sun went down, the two of them gathered around the campfire and began swapping more life stories. Lurkat wanted to know what was a beautiful and kind Thromboian woman like Fifth doing with such an evil and horrible tribe like the Confederacy of Banah. As it turns out, Fifth explained to Lurkat that she and her mother were enslaved by the tribe when she was just a baby. Lurkat, of course, could relate to this on a very deep level, as he too was also enslaved as a young child. This conversation, as well as the other conversations that they've had on this very long and cold trip, seems to have really brought the two of them very close, and they've really bonded together on this journey, so much so that the two of them have fallen in love. It was very late in the night, so the two of them decided that they would go ahead and lie down. They also had a very long trip ahead of them in the morning. The next morning, Fifth and Lurkat on horseback approached the tribe of Ur. The tribe of Ur was extremely small, so small in fact they didn't even have a proper village, they simply had tents that they would all live in. Lurkat and Fifth tied their horses at the entrance and began heading for the village center. A tribe's member warming up by the bonfire with her young daughter pointed the two of them towards the chief's tent. They thanked her for her directions and then entered the chief's tent. Upon entering the tent, Chief Maxie was huddled around a fire staying warm as his wife was cleaning her knife. After we approached, we began explaining to the chief that we were with the Sherdish tribe. We had heard of a famine in these lands and we had brought plenty of crops for his people to eat, albeit for a short period of time, but unfortunately our resources would be spread quite thin this winter as we also had other tribes to feed in the area. The chief was quick to ask what we wanted in return for all of this food, and Lurkat simply stated that we wanted nothing in return except to help our fellow Thromboians. Needless to say, the chief was flabbergasted by our good nature. After a very long and cold journey all the way back home, spanning over several days, Lurkat and Fifth had finally arrived. Needless to say, the two of them were very exhausted from their long journey and were extremely eager to finally rest. On their way to their room, they greeted Hack, who was in the hallway smoking a cigar just before bed. Finally, the two of them could finally get a good night's rest in a proper bedroom. No more sleeping out under the stars in the cold, snowy air. Finally a real comfortable bed to rest our weary eyes. We awoke in the middle of the night to sounds of gunfire in the distance. There were several sounds of people screaming and fighting as well. As we approached the commotion, we realized that it was a raid in the middle of the night by the Confederacy of Banah. Lurkat and Fifth quickly joined in with the others to fend off the raiders. After some time, it would appear that we managed to kill and injure enough of the raiders that they decided to flee, and we had arose victorious. We decided to take one of the raiders, known as Lot, prisoner, and we would try to recruit her. Sure, she tried to kill us, but we're all about rehabilitation here. You know, for most people. As for the raiding party leader, Sherd crushed his head like a melon with her hammer. A few hours later, Hack and Lurkat were discussing the battle over a game of chess. But the conversation quickly changed as Hack was more interested in gauging how Lurkat felt about this so-called Thromboian goddess. Lurkat explained that he had heard about the massacre in the Noquan Desert that the ancient Thromboian had committed, and he said that any god or goddess wouldn't need to use a rifle to do that kind of business. Hack explained to Lurkat that he and Carol have been discussing about this ancient Thromboian business, and that they're both a bit worried that Sherd's getting in over her head with it. Lurkat said that he was sure that Sherd knew what she was doing, and that nothing bad would most likely come from working with the ancient Thromboian and the Blue Stork tribe. Besides, he said, even if they were to go to war with the Marshals, the Marshal Service has it coming. They're an evil empire just waiting to be toppled. Sometime later, we ended up having a very large caravan from a local Thromboian tribe stop by. This local tribe had actually managed to tame and breed Thrombos for generations, it would appear. Unfortunately, they were a little bit out of our price range as for now, but we did end up giving them a good bit of food. Funny enough, they were actually a bit picky with the food that they were willing to accept. They wouldn't take any raw vegetables, so we ended up having to give them some pemmican. A bit strange for a caravan that claimed to be starving, but oh well. But just after the caravan had left, we began deconstructing some old logging empire buildings to make room for an animal pen. Unfortunately though, while deconstructing these old buildings, the roof collapsed on top of Sherd's head. Thankfully she was fine and Carol rushed to her side to try and doctor her wounds. As Chief Sherd was healing from her wounds, Fitz set out to try and tame some animals for our ranch. We decided a good starter animal for the ranch section of the empire would be rabbits, since they basically just eat grass, have lots of babies, grow up, and then then we eat them, rinse and repeat. Hack finally finished up the rabbit pen, and take a look at this. Boy, oh boy, might I just say that they look mighty happy in their little pen. Little do they know we're going to eat them. Alright, get back to breeding, you filthy rabbits. In the meantime, Carol decided that it was about time we lit up our beautiful farming empire with some lampposts. So she went building to building, creating these beautiful lampposts so that we can see our wonderful city in the dark. Not too long after this, we had some donkeys wander into the area and decide to join us here. They weren't exactly very fast, nothing that we want to ride into battle, but they would be perfect for hauling plenty of food to neighboring tribes. Finally, our farming and ranching empire is growing to an immense size. A size that I might add at this point is really becoming quite the contender for the old logging empire that stood in its place so many years ago. It was also around this time that Carol had actually worked up some schematics for some guard towers on our city walls. These guard towers would actually allow one of our tribe members to sit in it each night and watch out for raids from the Confederacy of Banat, or really any other people who would wish to do us harm. The guard towers would have a window on each side, that way the guard could see out in every direction. We had created a guard tower on our eastern wall, but we also decided to build a secondary guard tower at our southern wall. It would appear that this side of the empire is more prone to raids. During this time as well, we were also doubling up on our city walls, that way we could try and reinforce them and make them much stronger. But we were quickly interrupted by some amazing news. Fifth is pregnant with Lurkot's child. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Oh, glorious days. That's amazing. I'm sure Happy Oak will be extremely excited to learn that he is now going to be a grandfather. Lurkot himself was even so excited that he rushed into their room to build the baby a crib. Nothing says I love you more than a crib built with your very own two hands. Yes. I didn't have a father. Anyhow though, we began working on some city streets that would help us get around the place a lot faster and also keep the place a lot cleaner. It was also during this time that we were building the roads that Hack somehow convinced Lot, the raider who was previously trying to kill us, to join us. So we now have another wonderful addition to the Shurdish tribe. Things were really starting to look up for us. Late one rainy and soggy evening, Lurkot decided to take up his shift in the guard tower. He said to himself that he would ensure our safety and make sure that no raiders would sneak up on us again in the dead of night. No sirree, they would not get the drop on him. He would keep his new family safe. However though, poor Lurkot had no idea what was about to transpire this night. A squad of martial soldiers parachuted into the farming empire from the sky. This was Operation Pumpkin Fire. The marshals were tasked with burning down the farming empire to prevent us from feeding any more hungry tribes and thus increasing their ever-tightening grip on Thromboian kind. The martial squad approached our barracks where they assumed every member of the farming empire were sleeping. They began throwing Molotov cocktails at the building until it caught fire. They were going to try to burn us all alive as we slept. Thankfully though, as we were all sleeping, Fifth awoke to the burning building. As the smoke began to fill her lungs, she yelled for Lot and Carol and began to run outside so that she could breathe. Unfortunately though, Fifth had no idea that the marshals were waiting outside, and this turned out to be a catastrophic mistake. Fifth was dead. Hearing the gunshots, unaware as to what was going on, Lurkot, Hack, and Shurd began running into town. A massive gunfight would then ensue between the marshals and our farmers. This was an extremely bloody and chaotic battle, but we ended up killing the marshal captain, and thus we got the better of them. Completely unaware of Fifth's death, Hack, Shurd, and Lurkot began quickly trying to put out all the fires. Just as well, Carol was quickly trying to tend to Lot's wounds as they were damn near fatal. She had been shot several times by the marshals. But in the end, when it was all said and done, Fifth's body lay there in the rain, waiting to be spotted by the other farmers. Once they saw her, they were all extremely heartbroken with what had happened to their friend, but none of them were more heartbroken than poor Lurkot. Unfortunately, Lurkot would have the great displeasure of having to bury his lover, Fifth, as well as his unborn child. During the funeral, Lurkot was overcome with sadness and grief, but he was also overcome with hatred and anger towards the marshal service, much more than he had ever felt before. With Lurkot being so overcome by his own emotions, he was unable to give a speech at the funeral, so he gave the honor to Chief Sherd. Sherd talked about what a wonderful and kind person that Fifth was and how great of a warrior she was as well. She also mentioned how she knew that she would be a wonderful mother if she were to have been given the chance, but that opportunity was stripped from her by the Marshal Service. Lurkot vowed to make them pay for this. They had taken things from him before. His entire life, everyone has always taken from him from the moment that he was enslaved as a small child. But it was finally time for him to begin taking back. He would have his vengeance, even if it meant that he had to work with the ancient Thromboian that claimed to be some sort of deity, whatever it took. Meanwhile, in the city of Muffalo Point, Marshal-controlled territory, 4 Marshal guards are going about their nightly routines as a stranger approaches the city entrance. One of the soldiers attempts to interrogate the stranger, but she refuses to speak, causing the soldier to begin brandishing his weapon towards her. He threatens to kill her if she doesn't answer his questions.